What does it really mean when psychology labels something as abnormal? Is it about being strange, different, unusual? Or is abnormality something deeper, something that affects how a person thinks, feels, and lives? In today's world, the word abnormal is often used casually. But in psychology, it has a very specific meaning, and it's far more human than most people realize. This video will help you understand abnormality not as a judgment, but as a psychological concept rooted in empathy, science, and mental health. In psychology, abnormality refers to patterns of thoughts, emotions, or behaviors that significantly interfere with a person's ability to function in daily life. It is not about being different. It is not about being strange. And it is not about being weak. Abnormality is defined by impact, not appearance. If a mental pattern causes deep emotional distress, difficulty functioning in work or relationships, danger to self or others, then psychology begins to study it as abnormal behavior. One of the biggest misconceptions is that unusual behavior is automatically abnormal. Psychology strongly disagrees with this idea. Many people think differently, feel deeply, or live outside social norms, and are completely mentally healthy. Creativity, introversion, emotional sensitivity, or unconventional lifestyles are not signs of abnormality. Abnormality only enters the conversation when suffering enters the mind. Psychologists don't rely on just one definition. They use four major perspectives. 1. Deviation from statistical norm. This approach looks at how rare behavior is. If something occurs very infrequently in the population, it may be labeled abnormal. But rarity alone is not enough. High intelligence is rare. Genius is rare. Exceptional creativity is rare. Yet none of these are psychological disorders. So statistics alone cannot define abnormality. 2. Deviation from social norms. This approach focuses on cultural rules. Every society has expectations for behavior, what is acceptable and what is not. When behavior strongly violates these norms, it may be considered abnormal. However, culture changes. What was once considered abnormal may later be accepted. That's why psychology treats social norms carefully and never as the final answer. 3. Failure to function adequately. This is one of the most important perspectives. If a person cannot maintain relationships, perform daily responsibilities, manage basic emotional control, then psychology considers that person to be struggling with abnormal functioning. This definition focuses on life impact, not labels. 4. Deviation from ideal mental health. Psychologists also compare behavior to models of mental well-being. These include emotional stability, realistic thinking, self-awareness, ability to cope with stress. When these qualities are severely disrupted, abnormality may be present. One of the strongest indicators of abnormality is personal distress. If a person is suffering deeply because of their thoughts or emotions, psychology pays attention. A person might appear normal from the outside, smiling, working, socializing, but internally, they may be overwhelmed by anxiety, depression, or intrusive thoughts. Psychology listens to inner pain, not outer appearances. Another key concept is maladaptiveness. This means behavior that prevents a person from adapting to life. For example, extreme anxiety that prevents leaving home, depression that removes motivation to live, obsessions that consume hours of the day. These behaviors reduce quality of life and signal abnormal psychological patterns. When thoughts or behaviors become dangerous, abnormality is taken seriously and urgently. This includes suicidal thoughts, violent impulses, loss of contact with reality. In these cases, psychology prioritizes safety and treatment. Abnormality does not mean one single thing. It appears in many forms, such as anxiety disorders, depressive disorders, obsessive-compulsive disorder, trauma-related disorders, psychotic disorders. Each has different causes, symptoms, and treatments. This is critical to understand. Psychological abnormality is not a moral weakness. It is influenced by biology, brain chemistry, trauma, environment, life experiences. Mental disorders are conditions, not character flaws. The modern world places extreme pressure on the human mind. Constant stimulation, social comparison, lack of rest, emotional suppression. Many abnormal patterns today are reactions to unnatural lifestyles. Psychology recognizes that sometimes the problem is not the person, but the environment. Diagnosis in psychology is not about labeling people. It is about understanding patterns, finding treatment, reducing suffering. A diagnosis is a tool, not an identity. The word abnormal carries stigma, but psychology does not use it to judge, it uses it to help. Stigma comes from misunderstanding. Education creates compassion. Most psychological abnormalities are treatable through therapy, medication, lifestyle changes, emotional support. People recover. They heal. They adapt. Abnormality is not permanent. Abnormality in psychology does not define who a person is. It describes what a person is experiencing. An understanding that difference changes everything.